All right, everyone, welcome to our March 2023 Ducks meeting. I'm going to share our agenda here. Can everyone see the screen? Oops, I think I see some nodding. Okay.
All good.
All right, so the first topic on our agenda are challenges around grouped records in Aspen. And this was an appropriately timed suggestion from Michelle in the forums. Because we've also been having some discussions about this with the Aspen developers, and there's a couple of working groups that are also looking at these. Some Aspen working groups, I should say, that are kind of made up um, of representatives from across the several different Aspen libraries, including Swan. Um, so I've got the nope. Let me open that forums link again here. Um, so Michelle, I'm going to bring up your forums post, and do you want to kick us off and start this conversation?
Sure. So was trying to help a patron and they were looking for books. They were also like learning how to use the catalog and where the different sections were. So it was a bunch of newbies and kind of ironic. It was like the one time I was using Aspen instead of workflows because I'm a weirdo who usually uses workflows. And it said that we owned 2 copies of I Have a Dream. We could only find one. We didn't know what was up. I submitted a ticket to Swan saying like, oh, hey, I had placed the copy we couldn't find on hold for our circ staff to find, and they did. And I was like, oh, this is not the book I thought I had put on hold. And that's when I contacted Swan to say like, hey, I think this is on the wrong record. And they were like, no, it's not, because I Have a Dream, the text is the work, not the illustrations. And I didn't realize that all of the different editions from the last however many years, illustrated by different people, were all on the same work. And so that just kind of confused me and the patron. And the Swan mentioned that "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" works the same way in Aspen. And if I didn't know that, I feel like I should have known that. Um, I don't know if there's a better way to indicate that the picture could be a totally different book than what you're looking for. Or I don't think splitting the works apart is necessarily the right answer either. So I just wanted to see what you all were thinking and if there was anything we could do to make it easier for staff, or just to let staff know, like, hey, this is something to watch out for.
So before I jump in with any kind of updates from things the different working groups have been talking about, do we all know what Michelle is referring to? I'm going to bring up that "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" example. And so, yeah, so this is sort of where these are all the different records that we have um for this particular group. Oh my gosh, it's even longer than I thought. Okay. It just keeps going. So yeah, I'm curious to hear from y'all. So we have currently um currently this is like working as designed. We don't necessarily separate out different illustrators for a work. Um, but the only way to sort of, if you want like a specific illustrated version, I know this comes up with like Harry Potter as well sometimes, and different um like different illustrators people are looking for. Um, it is definitely hard to find under this show editions. Do y'all look under show editions when you're trying to find a specific illustrated edition? Do you have like other ways you tackle that?
I feel like this comes back to the discussion we had a few months ago. I mean, I don't remember when, but we were talking about like adding the potential of like adding the ISBN into the list of editions. Because of how sometimes people want the specific ISBN. And I know we had kind of ideated what that might look like. For right now, it is really, really hard to do, but I feel like if ISBN was there and you knew the ISBN of the illustrator you wanted or illustrated edition, that could fix it. But right now, yeah, we don't, it's come up, but we don't really have much we can do about it. Except sometimes we go into workflows.
Would displaying the specific illustrator help in this situation, maybe more than ISBN?
For this particular situation where the difference is the illustrations and also the ISBN, I think that might be helpful. At least it would have been in my situation.
Are there other scenarios that are similar besides just, I know Illustrator is one that comes up more often than others. Are there others similar, like maybe kind of contributing? Cynthia would know the word better. Is it contributing author? Contributors besides the illustrator that people are looking for, or that you're looking for often?
Sometimes the editor, like if you're looking for a specific translation, like I want the Odyssey translated by this person. I haven't actually tried that, so it might already be there in all honesty. But that's like the other contributor I can think of off the top of my head. And then obviously there's the people who want the specific edition because of the page numbers, and that's where ISBN would come in, I think.
I would say narrator for audiobooks.
I was about to ask about that.
As an audiobook person. Yeah.
Definitely the one that gets tricky is movies. They have a bajillion contributors in the record. Sometimes like it'll list all the actors and producers and that kind of thing. So another vote for the ISBN. I will be really honest. We got kind of ideated what ISBN will look like. But in our ideation, if you remember, I think what we kind of landed on was in the group display, in the details somewhere, we could like link these ISBNs to, because here's what the ISBN looks like. You display all of them. So I don't know that we can put all of those ISBNs in search results. It gets kind of gnarly. But we could maybe link from the group work display. We kind of came up with that might be the most reasonable thing. But to me, I think the display of the ISBN would not be as helpful as being able to have some sort of like special search that would take you, kind of skip the group work and take you straight to that particular record if it was like an advanced search function. Which is, I don't know how that sounds to y'all. I know it comes up a lot, but I wonder how much y'all really want to skim. Like even if we display the ISBN here, how helpful is it to skim all of these results?
I mean, I would do like a control, if I was looking for a specific ISBN and
Yeah,
the ISBN was
I think
in
staff
the,
would do a control F, but patrons probably. I'm honestly surprised often enough how many staff don't know to do a control F.
well, that's
So
fair. I don't think patrons would, but I
Yeah.
also don't think adding the ISBN under the edition would like add that much more information. And they probably aren't really looking at this page that much anyway. And
It could be
Patrons are.
multiple ISBNs in most cases. It's going to be several. That's kind of another.
oh, so you mean like for this, like for the 2013 first edition, you think there could be like how
It
many?
depends. I'd have to bring up a couple. That one has 2.
Oh, I see. what
That
you
one
mean.
has 2. We don't have separate. It's not one ISBN per record. So they can get a little bit. It could be, I've seen I've seen up to like 4, I think, 4 to 5.
Yeah, is
Um,
it new that it's like on the books page, like what you were just looking at? Like, I don't remember seeing that before. Is that
yeah,
like a,
it's always been there. Yeah,
oh, well, shame
it's right
upon
at the
me.
top.
Okay.
But you have to go into, you do have to go into the individual record page, which
Yeah.
this is like kind of a hot tip. If you don't know this, you can tell in the URL it says record. But the group work page, which is what you will see if you're not, you don't have your show editions expanded, that's gonna show grouped work. And that you'll see does not have ISBN because there's just a whole bunch of them.
I will, I'll point out that part of my confusion is with the I Have a Dream was that I could look up the ISBN and I found the other work on its individual record. And then that's where I was confused that it was on the grouped record with another title, or with another illustration version. And so I guess this is a really great conversation, but what I was hoping we could talk about is a better way to indicate that this group's record has multiple editions, which maybe is not an option. I guess what I was thinking in my head was like, could we put like 4 different pictures into the image instead of one of the covers, and put like multiple covers, and then people would see like, oh, there's a bunch of different things on this record, to indicate that there needs to be more research done, I guess, or more looking done on the specific editions. So it's
Yeah.
coming at it a little bit from the opposite side of not knowing that you need more. If that's
Yeah,
me.
so there's, and I don't know that these, I'm still not 100% sure if this will like solve these problems. But some of the ideas that have been sort of pie in the sky floated out by various working groups are the one is, the possibility of ungrouping based on like substantial differences in the records. So far, that's mainly come up for graphic novels, which in most cases are not going to group anyway. There's only a few cases they'd have to have the same title and author for the graphic novel for that to group. And like an example that comes up is like the Odyssey. Like there's a bunch of graphic novels and they don't group because they have different kind of primary authors. In terms of the covers, the suggestions that have come up are having some kind of like auto rotation on the covers, so that they're sort of scrolling between the like that this main cover could scroll between various covers, or that maybe they could what am I trying to look for? Wait, the kind of auto refresh periodically with a new cover. Another idea is showing the different covers under show editions. So that you'd have kind of a different display here and you would see the covers next to each individual edition. Jen asks how large those images can be. Right now, space is kind of at a premium. So I think that would accompany some visual design changes, which BioWord has been working on for a while. I'm impatient. I want to see them. I thought we did usability testing on some of them way back in, I want to say like it was I don't know, I think it was fall of last year. So maybe it's not that long ago, but it still feels like so long ago. So yeah, I think it would accompany some kind of visual design changes to show the covers. And they probably wouldn't be super large, to be really honest. Because it is like in a case of something like that. more so in the case like 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. It's a lot of or Pride and Prejudice. Some of these records have a ton of additions attached to them. And then some other things that have come up were in essentially like kind of more evaluating what information we show in the search results. Like, do we need physical description, for example? Should we replace that with something like, illustrator, narrator, those contributor values? Probably not all of them, but some of those key folks that people identify, like illustrator, narrator, and what was the other one that the editor. So I don't know what your reactions are to those ideas. Again, they're just like things that have been thrown out at some kind of Aspen user groups. Oh, translator. Thank you, Jean. You reminded me. There's one instance where physical description is helpful, but I don't think patrons would know this. It's really hard to suss out when something is an abridged version, which is also a conversation happening around the Aspen community right now. And one of the ways to do that is when you see like a book is normally like maybe 300 pages and then you see one that's like 65. That's a good indicator. But yeah.
I just, I could have put it in chat. I think for situations like this, I think we really need to, I like the degrouping idea. Like, I like having all the records together, of course, but there seem to be such significant differences between all of these that, like, no matter what we do, whether it's images or pictures or whatever, patrons would still have to click on that show editions button to narrow down and see that they're like, I don't know, this just seems like there's so many significant differences between all the variations of these titles that they shouldn't be grouped together to begin with. Like, it defeats the purpose. I mean, this is so unpatron friendly that I don't know. I don't know. If we ever get a vote, I hope we break all these up, because this is not helpful. And we did that with graphic novels, didn't we? You reminded me, Tara, because those were getting grouped initially in the pilot a lot. They were getting roped in with our books.
In some cases, what's the
It was happening with, oh, sorry.
Here's one. Yeah, it depends on the R&R data,
Yeah.
basically.
Because I thought that we had done something to get those to be excluded, but I could obviously be completely wrong. Yeah, Michelle, I do mean select titles, like like this Was the Night Before Christmas and I Have a Dream, like these big ones that seem like they're just creating these massive confusing records.
Yeah,
This is just not, it's a mess.
So there's also, I think if we're talking automated grouping, okay, so here's an example of like the Odyssey, the graphic novels, and you'll see these are using, the author is not Homer. It is the author author and illustrator of the graphic novel, because there's significantly enough different works. I spelled the Odyssey. Okay. Well, and there's other graphic novels that will group if they have the same author, and I cannot think of an example right now, but often they don't. I will say there's books like Pride and Prejudice that also have, they have illustrations, and they have an illustrator. So if we're looking at automated grouping and separating out based on perhaps based on illustrator or certain contributors, that is also something I think we'd have to toss really carefully, because in a lot of cases, I don't know if anyone cares about the the illustrator for Pride and Prejudice necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. And if we could just have select titles where not, I'm not saying we as in our libraries, but you guys at Swan had the ability to be like, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" is not getting grouped no matter what, then that would be, I think, a more helpful scenario for everybody. And it would also help the catalog better reflect what workflows actually is, so that people on the desk wouldn't necessarily have to use the back end catalog unless they wanted to, like this is just it's not helpful.
So what would be the criteria? That's sort of my question. At some point, there has to be a data point that says these titles get grouped and these don't, right? And then correct me, feel free to jump in, Cynthia or Claudia. I don't know. That we have some ability to manually ungroup things, but it gets tricky and we try to avoid it as much as possible and address the data inconsistencies that might be causing something to group when we don't want them to, or that we would prefer to ungroup. And partly because once you ungroup something, it can never be grouped with anything else ever again. It's kind of on its own island. So you have to be really careful about that. And I know Scott's team puts a lot of work into that. So I think it's important to think about what are the cases specific, and then tie that to specific data where it would be worth ungrouping. And it seems like maybe not every time there's an illustrator do we want to break that out into a specific work. It could be that,
I agree,
Yeah.
but I really think that we need to address like if this is something that we can ungroup, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" now, based on the fact that there are, even if the 100s and the 245s are consistent across the board with the title, author of more and the title of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," when we have these various editions where you have 75 different illustrators, that's cause for
yeah. And
degrouping
it
this
could be
record.
it could be something also to think about. I don't know, in terms of our cataloging practices, which I'm less. I don't know. Yeah, we would definitely need. We definitely need some data to like find those records and pull them apart.
You would have to, you've already said it, it'd have to be very specific, because it's, what if it's not known by Illustrator? I mean, so we have to be very specific, because we can't start doing different cataloging practices for works that we think are going to be done under Illustrator, like found under Illustrator, for works that aren't found. Like, there's a reason why cataloging is standardized, and we need to kind of follow that, because otherwise we're going to drive ourselves crazy. So we really have to think about how it's going to be accessible within Aspen first.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw out, I think, I don't want to take up too much more time on this particular topic, because I think the argument to, do we want to identify, basically like on a case by case basis, do we want to identify certain titles like "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" that are maybe just around, I don't know, common things that patrons bring to the desk? I think that's something to bring to the cataloging advisory group. And just essentially like, how would we handle, like if that is something that we could and would want to do, and how will we decide what records get that kind of like manual treatment? Myself a little note, essentially like, how do we want to handle a Night Before Christmas case? And I don't know how many of those types of titles there are. I mean, certainly like the "I Have a Dream" is not a particularly, oops, I'm Googling. There's not that many records on it. And that's partly why I know that "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" is maybe an extreme case. "I Have a Dream" is not an extreme case. it's a pretty common case across Aspen. There's only 6 editions here. And for something like that, I think that's where we can look at, I don't know if we would want, maybe we do want to ungroup all of these. I don't know. But are there also, I'm curious if there's also other ways to make the illustrator more prominent if you're looking for another edition and kind of communicating. I think like Michelle said that there are multiple editions under this.
Claudia, is there a way that we can get it to not like, instead of showing that publication data, show the subfield E in the 245? Because that's where Illustrator would be listed.
There'd be a code change. We just gotta, that's in terms of what displays on the search results display.
Yeah, so when you had that up,
Yeah, it's a code
Oh.
change. It'd
Yeah.
be a development request.
so
Um,
I'm wondering if that would solve the problem for some aspects of it, because that would be in the Illustrator would be listed in the 245 subfield C. And then that would help people identify other, if there's a particular forward or a particular translator or something. Because if people don't like that publication information there, then maybe that might be the resolution for it.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of the conversation. It's not just whole hog displaying everything from the 245E, because again, that could get
I was just going to say that.
it
Yeah.
could be a nightmare.
Some
It's
245s are very
like-
big.
Yeah, it's really identifying like some specific like contributors, and there is the ability to pull that out, I believe.
Could it pull the
Um,
first 700 in the records?
I think they can pull whatever field we want, but there also will be some data manipulation there. And I don't think we need to go into this meeting about the fields and the programming involved. I think we just need to have a discussion more as what would be helpful to you all. Is it would seeing the covers under show edition be helpful or not really? Would seeing the illustrator be helpful? And is that something we should keep pursuing with the Aspen developers? Maybe so showing the covers, do you guys like that idea, or no, you don't like it? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I'm on the fence about it. I think I wonder if it would take a lot more time for the page to load, and I would worry about that.
Oh, that came up. And one way around that is they basically load when you hit show edition, so they don't all load at once.
Yeah. I was surprised. I was honestly going to say, well, when you hit more info, I think the covers should show up, but they do. So it's nice to know that there at least is a way for them to show up.
Any other thoughts on the cover idea?
I think people are more likely to recognize a cover than they are to think of a name of an illustrator. But
Michelle says
I
the
can see it
contributors
both
might
ways.
be. Yeah, okay. Graham says additional clutter to an already cluttered tiny area. That is definitely a concern. I mean, obviously, like we were just talking about, adding whole hog to all of the contributors would be a nightmare. Yeah, and that's, I think one of the other things on our kind of our discussion topics has been findability of call numbers and getting patrons to find those. So yeah, every piece of information we add is kind of taking away the visibility of everything else that's there. That's something definitely to consider, but so yeah, I think adding the covers would involve a design overhaul. We'd have to make this little tiny table a lot bigger. What about showing contributors? Do we like say, will we be willing to ditch the physical description for an illustrator, for example, even if we weren't gonna add more, we're gonna replace.
If you truly want dirty cataloging, you could realistically put in a 250 with the brackets for the like first edition subfield
Let's go like theoretical right now.
theoretical.
Let's keep it theoretical. Like, you know, John Klassen illustrated this book. He didn't write it. His name is there.
You could
Somehow
put it-
magically we'll figure it out.
you could realistically
We don't need to go into the
right, but you
I
could
think right now,
realistically
but
put it in a 250 with the subfield B and say illustrated by, because it's about it's about that particular edition. But that would be a very loose interpretation of that in specific.
Yeah.
text.
I think we can pull the data out. There's lots of tips and tricks. We don't have to just fully import a whole field. We don't do that in many places. So I'm not concerned about that piece. I think it's just more like, is this worth pursuing? If we can get just, you know, the name of the illustrator, the name of the narrator. Jean says keeps the year and page numbers. Okay, page numbers are part of the physical description, and so that's a good. I'm glad you brought that up, Jean, because that's good to keep in mind. Michelle says get rid of size, add 1 to 2 contributors. So it sounds like page numbers are important, but maybe some of the other details are not. All right, I think that's some good information to go off of and take back to that Aspen developers. Kind of as what would be helpful and what would not. Yeah, I think those are all good things to keep talking about. You know, and definitely, like I said, these conversations are going on at other Aspen libraries too. So I think some more ideas will come up, and I think, you know, as you're like using Aspen over the next before our next meeting, think about like what else might just be a signifier that there's kind of signify the groupedness of the works, for lack of a better word. You know, that there's like, other than the show editions button, that there's kind of multiple, indicating to folks that there's multiple editions, not just the one the cover is listed for, which is definitely, I know, kind of been a, like, you kind of, at this point we kind of have to pick one, but maybe if we didn't have to pick one, that would be an indicator, but there might be some others too. Okay. Is there anything else on the grouped records? I also have, in addition to the takeaways, to talk to the Aspen developers about. I think the other takeaway is maybe talking to our cataloging groups about how we want to handle some of those, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like intensively grouped records. Like the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, things that just have tons and tons of editions, and maybe the illustrator or the contributor is something we want to separate out and call more attention to. Okay. All right, so next up is a follow-up on the New Year's resolution activity we had. I've got our it's like, it's tiny. How do I make it big? Here we go. Can y'all see this? Hopefully a little bit better. Okay, so last time, for those of you that were not at our last meeting, we brainstormed essentially like some things that Ducks would like to work on this year. So we came up with essentially 4 research topics, a couple of kind of UX techniques to dive into, and then I just sort of called these like a development focus, like kind of clear enhancements to the catalog that that we are interested in. So we'll talk about the development focus in a little bit, but those were improve the app experience, visual design improvements, improvements to lists, and accessibility improvements. And we'll dig into those when we talk about the development priorities and progress, which is our next topic. But for now, I want to focus on the research topics. All right. So now you'll all be mad at me for making you brainstorm these, because I'd like us to pick a research topic to focus on in this group, kind of for the rest of the year, basically for the rest of our meetings. It doesn't necessarily mean the rest just get neglected. So don't worry about that piece. It's more just what's something meaty that this group would like to focus on. Yeah, and something that you would be comfortable doing some homework with too, because there will definitely be, with research, there's always homework. So that might be in the shape of interviews with patrons. It could be observations, like immediately the one that's sort of like something that stood out to me with the kind of looking at usability of call numbers is that you'd have to actually follow patrons from the catalog to getting the thing to understand how they use those call numbers. So kind of keep that in mind. There might be some homework for y'all. So yeah, I want to discuss each of these in a little more detail, and then we'll vote. We'll do a little dot vote. Let's get prepped for our vote. Let me make sure I'm gonna pop this link in the chat, and then there's the chat. Okay. Okay. Let me know if that is the Zoom link and not this link. Sorry about that. I really thought I just copied them.
I was
Try that
very
again.
confused when I clicked on that. I was like, what is this?
It is not copying. Okay. It's just not copying when I click my copy button. I don't know why. I'm just gonna try sending you the board URL here. Let me know if you can get to that. That's really odd. Okay. Let me know if you can't get into that.
The whiteboard's opening, yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So we'll start the vote in a little bit. You'll be able to all see and vote. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so here's some questions to keep in mind as we discuss. So first of all, think about what the problem is we're trying to solve. And then if we solve that problem, how much impact would it have on your patrons or on you and your day-to-day work? And then kind of in the back of your mind, have an idea like, are there tools? Like, is this an answerable question or a solvable problem? Can we look at like analytics data? Can we do some interviews with patrons and observe what they're doing? Are there some ways to get at this sort of vaguely? In our next meeting, we'll talk about like the details of whatever topic we we choose and what kind of research methods we want to use. But for now, just have in the back of your mind, like, is there like some way to answer this? Okay. So number one, how often or how are people using filters? Anyone want to discuss this? What are problems you're seeing? What are ways this could be better that you're curious about? No thoughts? Do you all use filters? Do you want your patrons to use the search filters?
For me, it seems like I frequently am showing patrons filters and it's always completely brand new information. They've
Okay.
never looked at them. So I don't know if that's helpful to know.
Okay, yeah,
I will also say that we're talking about the filters along the side of the.
really
along
any
this-
way
Oh,
to
okay,
filter down your
okay.
search results.
I
That
just
could be
want to
like
make sure.
Yeah,
I will say that I used to use them a lot, and the change that they made to like shorten them up is annoying and I hate it. That's completely unrelated to this question though, but when you
to
ask if,
shorten them up, like
Mhm.
fewer show here.
yeah, like you click on it, or maybe that one's a bad one, I don't know, but you click on any of them and it's like, it doesn't show the full list. And you have to
Yeah.
search for what they are, and that assumes that people understand the specific, like, I don't know, I don't like it in like the subject one, because that assumes that
The
people know.
subject never showed everything.
I
will
know it
say.
didn't, but it used to show like it.
Used
you
to show
have
more?
more, and
Okay,
and now it doesn't, and it was just perfectly fine. It couldn't show everything, but like it. For some of them, it's like it assumes that somebody knows what they should look for in that search box in a weird way. I'm not explaining
Yeah.
myself correctly, but
no, I see what you mean,
know,
that you kind of have to know what you're looking for
Yeah.
if you're gonna search for it.
yeah. So I don't know, but that's not necessarily the question that we
It could be
That you're
part of a
asking, so.
question.
Well,
It could be
yeah.
part of a research question, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess, I don't know. It used to be I feel like it was kind of helpful, but I don't know if it is anymore. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna stop rambling now.
So I see people often don't even use the like available now or library filter. At least in feedback. Here we go. Michelle, the searching within the filter has only been available for like, oh my gosh, I think my brain is, I think it came out this month. Was it this release? It's been like 2 weeks. If I'm right, unless sometimes I get confused about times, and it could be it was last month, but I think it was this month. Okay, yeah, that's a brand new one. I kind of like the searching, but yeah, gray mouse size filters are so novel. It's common on every website where you search or buy anything. And that's, you know what, I'm glad you brought that up, Graham. I think that's a good point, because that could be part of this, that could be part of the research project, is some competitive or compare, I don't want to say competitive, even though that is what it's called, or comparative. Comparative testing, where we kind of look at, like, you know, instead of testing like the library website and a usability test, you can test Target or Home Depot or whatever, Amazon, whatever you kind of set up as decide that you want to test as sort of a how do people use filters in this other environment. Michelle brings up, yeah, this could even be expanded. People just look at the first couple of results and don't go further. Which I think is a common behavior in general for searching on the web. Okay. Those are some things to stew on, some things we can learn about filters, like are they helpful to people? Do we Michelle says that's why we have jobs, yes. We love our filters, we know how to search, we're pros at it. Yeah, so there could be some good topics around this, just like, are we what are people maybe more generally, what are people searching behaviors? Why do they use filters? Why do they not use filters? Are they using them in other places and not the library for some reason? Those could all be good things to dig into. All right. Next question, or next possible topic. Let's discuss this, and we'll discuss each for a little bit and then vote. So how are people accessing databases? And Graham asked, it should be fairly easy to get analytics on this, right? The filters are applied to the URL. Surprisingly, we don't have, we can crunch some numbers. We can get some of those. There's two issues with the filters in terms of data. One is that they are in the URL and they include things like browse categories. If people are looking through those. So sometimes, so we do have like instances of search filters that are just getting applied from like browse category links, and staff too. So we don't have, we're not currently able to filter out staff. Basically because there's just too many IP addresses. It isn't something we can do in theory, but we can't. Because Google only allows you to set 100 IP addresses as internal, and unfortunately, we have a bajillion. Okay, but yes, we can definitely do some data crunching there too, in addition to some maybe interviews or other types of research. So databases, this was actually a discussion the e-resource advisory group discussed a little bit in the last meeting as well, just sort of kind of getting a baseline of like what people's efforts are currently. Michelle says databases are probably one of the most of interest to my librarian director. Jen says people are always just so amazed we have databases. Kelly says they spotlight a different database on each e-newsletter we send out. So this is a good, in some ways, this is more of a like marketing research question, maybe than a UX question, but it could be both. I think there's a lot of avenues that this could go. You could look at how you're communicating, like your libraries are communicating databases to patrons and what efforts are the most successful, how Aspen is presenting those and placards or through the search, which I know is not primarily how people access databases. They're I think going to them a lot more, going to them more frequently. I'm gonna say this, they more often go to the database directly than they're searching through the Aspen article search. So yeah, other challenges, thoughts with databases. Sounds like the problem is just essentially that people don't know they're there, maybe sort of like the filters. Are there specific use cases that y'all can think of you want to address? Like,
I'm really interested in databases like outside of placards and everything, just like every website from a library seems to have a different page for how databases are are on their website. And whether they just have all the databases on one big page or break it out by topic or how they do it. I'd like to know what's most successful, honestly, because that's something we struggle with.
great question.
Tara, is it possible, since I'm new to Aspen and I know I came from a Alma Primo VE discovery layer. Is it possible just on the main search page to throw in an article title and be able to pull it up? Or do they have to filter by articles and databases in Aspen and for them to get that particular title?
A bit of yes and no. Honestly, I'm curious if this. There's a sort of explore more section that can hook you up with results, but I don't, and that's something I don't know if we're tracking usage of that, but that would be like a quantitative piece to look at this.
Yeah, like the patron comes in and says, I have this journal article title, types in that journal article title into the SWAN catalog and is able to pull up that journal article if the library has access to it.
Yeah, but the most direct way is to get to the articles and databases drop down. Yes, it sounds like there's definitely interest in from the chat and the like what's working in terms of your website database listings. Sarah says that she's noticed that people are using article search because the usage has almost doubled for some reason. Interesting. That is fascinating. I'm curious why that is. Sometimes it's just a handful of patrons that are responsible for a huge increase in use. Okay, so it sounds like there's interest in maybe communications and communication efforts for libraries, how they're presenting their page, and then kind of the success of placards or article search. And maybe some data we could actually pull there. Okay. Yeah, Jean says that the communications PR marketing piece. Okay. Grouped records. Do people get them? This is our whole our whole discussion for the first chunk of our meeting. So clearly that's rife with opportunity. There's this sort of, the understanding of additions I think we can throw in there since we're talking about that. What else about grouped records? Graham is throwing out, I'm assuming, Graham, this is related to the article search, the sort of looking at different search box designs. And how that might affect access. Okay. Cool. That would be a fun research activity too. What else about grouped records? Are there other things you want them to know more besides, just maybe the essentials of there's multiple editions, you could get one of any of them, or you could find a specific one, which is plenty, honestly, to dig into.
People struggle with the formats. Like we've had a
Okay.
number of people requesting things and they're like, it's not in large print. And it's like, well, it is. You just only looked at the first one.
Okay. You're not like kind of looking down the whole list of formats.
Yeah. Or I don't know, they're not interpreting it correctly. I'm not sure, but like the number of requests we have for things that we own is just troubling.
That might be an area where we could also look at like essentially different design options. Or that might make the formats clearer or make the some of the things like we talked about with the additions, make that clearer. I mean, I will say when we're looking at like mock-ups and that kind of thing, we definitely need to work with our Aspen developers. That's something that could like move a little slowly, like we can come up with some things ourselves, like some wireframes and stuff and kind of look at those, but we definitely want to coordinate closely because I know have things that they're working on too. So that could be a longer, I'm more just saying that could be like a longer term thing where we're sort of working with them to get like some working mock-ups. And collaborating with them to make sure it's something they would actually like develop for us. Not just that we're making up. And then but that could go a little longer than a year, which would be fine. But yeah.
Tara, is there a way so right now book is on top. Is there a way to put large print right underneath it?
This has been a request on and off. And it always comes back to it's essentially book is first and then everything else is alphabetical order. And that seems to be the best, easiest way for folks to understand it. And every time that anyone tries to kind of explores the idea of messing with the order, then it just becomes really confusing. It's basically what it ends up coming down to. It's an idea that surfaces regularly, I would say. And it might be there's a little bit of there might be a little bit of more like grouping that we could do, but yeah, it is currently alpha order.
Because I was
they are all book formats. So it is sort of like, how do you decide, do you want the audiobook to be below large print for some patrons, and that they'd be like, oh, well, you don't have an audiobook, so I'll just not bother. So, you might be creating a problem for another format.
Oh, okay. Because I was just like, here's the physical. I was thinking, here's the actual physical form of the book, and then here's the audio form of the book, and then like the digital audio. Like that's kind of what my brain was thinking. But okay.
Yeah, I think looking at that more in the context of like more like visual design changes, like to me, the question may not even be the format order. It may be the list view. You know what I mean? And I'm kind of thinking of, yeah, physical and electronic are interspersed. So there could be some grouping happening, but there could also just be like a larger, like, how do we display those formats? Is it a list, or is it more like the Lita app? Which if you haven't looked at it, might be an indicator where things are going. So yeah, that's kind of something to look at. Maybe group records might be more like visual design. Sounds like like ways to communicate the like the groupedness of all the additions. And then the last one is call numbers. I'd like y'all to throw out. What are your
See-
challenges with call numbers?
I think this would be an easy one to test. You just, okay, it sounds creepy, but you follow someone coming into the library who is going over to a computer. Okay, you don't follow them, you ask them, but whatever. And you see what they're looking up, and then you can see what they think the call number is, because I think this was one that I brought up because we were having people, the whole call number would say something like graphic novel JAPP or whatever. And they would come back to me and say, okay, the call number is JAPP. And we would go look and it wouldn't be there. Well, for some reason, they didn't understand that the call number also included the words graphic novel. So it was, I don't know, for some reason, but as it relates to new items, that part I think was not as illustrated. It's not as clear that it's a new item. There's no like special coloring or anything.
Okay, so they're sort of indicating like new items or maybe like display items are on it in a different place. Is that what I'm hearing? And then just like leaving off part of the call number. A little bit of talk about tabs and design stuff still, which is all good.
We have a lot of people who look at the location and write down the location and they never write down the call number and they're like, well, it says J Fiction, that's where it is. And it's like, no. Yes, but
Yeah.
no.
I think part of our problem is that our library name is so long that like you don't bother reading the whole thing and then you don't see the location. Because like all of our graphic novels start with JF the same way our J series do, the same way our J fiction does. So like where it says juvenile biography, nobody sees that. So,
I see what you mean.
and that's a call number and a location issue, not just call number.
Maybe some more display tweaks to test. Anything else with the call numbers is sort of that one is a little more straightforward, just like how can we make it easier for people to know what they need to write down to go find the thing?
Too bad we can't say, write this down. Right next to the call
I
number.
know. And my other one's almost just like if there's like a copy button, but it made like a paper. Or just copy the exact stuff what you needed, which maybe is I am sort of thinking of not
Well,
the same, but
But like, I'm just looking at this results here and people don't often always click even beyond that. And it's like, yeah, the call number's there. We all know that, but patrons, it doesn't say call number anywhere. Like,
yeah.
that's what the call number is. So if you're like, well, did you write
Yeah.
down the call number? They just stare at you blankly like, huh?
And you do kind of need both these pieces of information, the location and the call number to get the thing, right? In some cases, at least, like if you, like if it's new or on display, in this case, like you might find it with just the call number, but most likely the youth services nonfiction is going to be a more helpful thing to get you in the right general area. Right. And I'd also wanted to point out something that we could look at related, like there's if Sarah and Julie, as you're the only library that has stack map, looking at like, does this type of like supplemental tool help your patrons or not? Could be an interesting piece to look at too. All right, any final thoughts on our topics before we vote? All right. Let the voting commit. All right. Actually, I'm gonna stop sharing. And I realized I just had a moment of panic where I think I've forgotten how to vote. Okay, no, here it is. Like there was an upgrade of our Miro boards and it's in a different spot now. Let me see. Oh yes, I will put in the link again. Let me just.
Tara, I can put it in there while you're searching.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I don't know why
Done.
I've lost my voting. Oh, no. I'm gonna do this the silly way. I don't know how I just don't see the option to vote. Let me try one thing here. No, okay, I give up. We're gonna do the not fancy way. I'm gonna have you vote in the chat. Do you see in the Zoom chat here? So which means you won't necessarily need the link to the board. Do you see in the Zoom chat, you can add a thumbs up or just like, you can say, yes, this is the one I want. So we're gonna start off with the vote for filters. Everyone that wants to vote to do more research on filters. Add an emoji, you can add a thumbs up emoji in the Zoom chat or just say me. You get one vote today. My dot voting is not working. I don't know why. I'm sorry. I'm gonna give it like, okay. I got two votes. Going once, going twice. All right, sold 2 votes for filters. All right, databases. Put that in the chat. Oh, we got a third one for. Okay. Oh, databases is, it's got 5 now. All right. And grouped records. Got one for group records too. And last but not least, call numbers. Kelly, I just want to make sure your thumbs up is for call numbers, right? All right. Anyone else for call numbers? I'll give it like 1 more minute. All right, I think databases is the winner with am I right about this? Yeah, with 5. Yeah, all right. Databases it is. We'll be digging into that. So between now and our next meeting, I'll brainstorm a couple of different research methods that we might try, and we'll talk about those in our next meeting and then start planning what we're gonna do. It'll be a fun opportunity to learn about some different UX research techniques, but also obviously look into our database usage. And that also means Olivia will be, we'll get to be, we may have like a collaboration with the U-Resource Advisory Group, which will be fun. All right, thanks everyone. That was super fun. Okay, we have a little bit over our time, which is fine. So I did want to talk about our Aspen development updates. We'll probably skip the LIDA update. I posted some of the highlights of the last release for the LIDA app in the forums. So if you didn't see that, you can take a look and definitely play around with the LIDA app and see some of those bug fixes. It was like mostly some bug fixes, but some nice things. Okay, so in terms of what we most recently had come up with Aspen, a hot tip is you can use the little Aspen tag to get all of our release notes. So I'll quickly go through these. Oh, it was the March release. It was the 15th. It hasn't even been 10 days, Michelle, that we got the filter searching. Which is sad that I immediately forgot it. So we got the filter searching option that came in the last release. I think this is maybe less controversial. The ability to search within the admin interface is really nice. I have to almost remind myself not to use Control F and to use the interface search because it's actually really good. And this one was kind of big. And I am going to be hyping up our Aspen office hours that are coming up in April. For those of you that use purchase suggestions, and I know St. Charles is one, there's some email options. So you have the ability to email new requests. So we've had this kind of request ongoing for a daily digest. This isn't quite that. It actually just emails you every time there's a new request. It's not a daily digest, but it can still be really useful if you have like a staff email list or something like this, especially if you set up like a dedicated staff email list for purchase suggestions. It can alert your staff that there's new purchase suggestions waiting in Aspen. There's also the ability to set a from address. So if you send email updates to patrons after they place that initial request, it would come from your library's email and might, give you the opportunity. You could set it to a no reply, but you could also set it to something where you could actually correspond with the patron more about their requests and kind of kick that off through the interface. So two things to keep in mind if you use purchase suggestions. Those were on our list for a long time. There's also an option to clear an uploaded cover. If you upload one and it just looks like garbage and you don't have a better one, you don't have to replace it with something else. You can just reset it and it would do that like Aspen, just automatically generated cover. And then there's some tools for our BIB services folks within SWAN where they can now have a little more ability to correct discrepancies on volume numbers for series. And that's, I know, going to be helpful for them, which in turn will be helpful for y'all when you put in tickets and want to get those things fixed. Any questions about the 2303 release? No, that was really fast. The February release was super light. There were other things, but like not everything's for us. Sometimes they're for other ILSs, and that kind of thing. But the big one from the 2302 release, which was February, was that now if patrons set their preferred name in Aspen, it will update the checkbox in Symphony to use preferred name. So that means their notices and on your workflows interface will all show the patron's preferred name. So you can, refer to them the way they want to be referred to in your patron interactions if you're in workflows. And then they're also getting those notices with their preferred name. And if that's Batman, that's great, which is definitely what someone set their preferred name to, and it made me really happy. Which we discovered when we're doing some testing. So whatever people want, that's what will show up. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Yeah, so our I go back to our Miro boards here. Bring up our, did not do what I wanted. 1 second. Oh, there we go, clicked on the wrong one. So here's our priorities. Which again, now I'm having this voting problem and I'm not exactly sure how we're gonna how we'll vote. But we don't really need to vote on these.
Tara, I
yeah.
figured it out.
You did?
If you go up by, if you go up by the little symbols, it's like the triangle plus sign over on the other side, your right-hand side.
Oh,
There you go.
there's the voting. It used to be at the bottom.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, y'all. I should have been prepared for this change. Okay. So here's our resolutions to kind of guide our priorities here. And I just wanted to point out all the stuff that's gotten done since the last time we set these, which was November. We had a bunch of linked account improvements, changed that overdrive label to, I think it's Libby/overdrive now. The preferred name stuff is finally done as of February, and then the purchase suggestion emails also got addressed. So those are all squared away. We have, I think we're gonna do like a short version. Sometimes we do like look at all the possible enhancement requests and we prioritize the whole kit and caboodle. I think I kind of purposely left these like sorted in our previous sort, but I pulled out things for lists. So one of our resolutions was improvements to lists. And we have this really vague better management of lists for Aspen admins, which isn't super actionable. So I've been trying to collect some more like specific requests, like things that we could change when related to lists. And I got some really good suggestions from the Aspen users group and a couple of things that have just come in tickets and conversations with library staff, like a shout out to Cindy at Downers Grove. She had a bunch of suggestions and we're talking about some other things related to Aspen. So I've just compiled those here and I thought it might be helpful to have y'all take a look at these priorities and see if there's some of these, especially some of the list stuff that we might want to add into our must-do category. And for those of you that are new, this whole process is very unscientific. We just fight each other over these Post-its and move them around into these must-do, should-do, and could-do categories. So must-do are the things we're really going to focus on over the next, essentially like the next quarter or so for our Aspen development priorities. And then the should-do are things that like we want to get done at some point. And then the could-do is like, it's nice to have, but if we don't do it, it's fine. So I'm gonna have y'all in our last couple of minutes, I'm just gonna have you go nuts. There's all these lists things. There, I'm just gonna let you read them and decide if any of these, let's see if we can maybe add. Let's like see if we can add like 3 of them to the must-dos.
Hey, Tara,
Yeah.
can you share the link to this
Yes,
board? And thank
I
you.
am
Thank you.
right now. Right there it is. Feel free to steal Post-its and move them wherever you want. I see one person. Oh, I see some more. All right, yes. I will stop sharing since you'll have the link. I will say there's also a won't do column, and if you really think something's a bad idea, you can put it there. It's starting to slow down. Give it one more minute. One hanging out this keyword search for browse categories in the Aspen admin. Does anyone want to tackle that? How important is it to you to be able to search your browse categories? All right. I think that's everything. I see mice moving, but not Post-its moving. I think we landed with 4, and which is fine. I think this is good, a good number. And masquerade mode, the masquerade mode request. I'm glad that ended up there too. So we got folders, the drag and drop for lists. To sort them in that drag and drop order in my account. Oh, this is actually, I'm gonna move this one because this was sort of the generic. So we really do just have 3. And then sorting the list by availability. Interesting. These are not necessarily the ones I expected. Okay, and then this in the should do's. We've got the ability to search your own list, display a last edited or last used date, link the list links and search results. I'm surprised that ended up in the should do, but that's okay. And then the keyword search for the browse categories was the other new one there, I think. And then it looks like we've got in our could do's a shuffle feature and export lists of lists. And won't do view all lists for a library, private and public. I'm surprised that ended up there, actually. Who put that there, and tell me your logic? Do you not need to see all the lists at your library? Is it just not a thing? It's okay if you don't want to speak up. Oh wait, we got a chat. I had the chat. Jen says privacy. Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. And then there might be a way to limit to staff only. That was sort of, I think, where yeah, just from staff accounts.
If we could do staff accounts, I think that should be in should do.
Okay.
And I mean, I'll go with the group for sure, but the list links and search results, I personally have that in must do. I think that would be really nice.
Yeah. It's been on the list for a long time. So, and just for that reason, it'd be nice to get it done.
Yeah,
Well,
true enough.
good.
I just wanted to, sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, just with the lists like showing up in the search results, I just wanted to share, like, I just had that happen again with a patron. Like, it does happen frequently where our copy of The Silent Patient, all our copies are checked out, but a patron was like, no, I saw it. It said it's in your while you wait list. And I was like, that's not our list. It's not here.
Yeah, I think that I'm gonna put that one in must do. I'm gonna do I don't know, the executive decision. I think that's a big one, and when I hear about it enough. Good. So I know this is a really, really short version of this activity, but I think this will help. This gives us some more priorities to focus on, because we really did knock a lot out in November. So we'll do a more thorough version of it maybe at our next meeting, where we really evaluate all of the enhancement requests. But this will give us something good to start working on over the next month or so. Thank you, everyone. That was a whirlwind meeting. Is packed. But yeah, we got a lot out of it. So thank you so much. That's our agenda for today. And just a reminder, think about coming to the next Aspen user group meeting in between our Ducks meetings. It's April 11th. And yeah, it's just getting started, but it's a good group. And we had a really good discussion about lists last time. So I'd encourage y'all to attend. All right. Well, I will stop sharing and stop the recording. If anyone has anything else, then we'll hang out for a little bit.